Yo, everyone! This is Bunny Boots Inc., or known as David Verner, however you want to call me. I am here with Mike Bluehair. Hey, yo, you're unmuted, guys. And, of course, with a former officer, Nick Stacy, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah.
Okay, make sure I got that right. Mike, you there?
Yeah, man, I'm right here.
Yeah. It looks like that did generate the way I thought it was. I just put a link of what you needed to send out for the Steam it there. So you can get that sent out.
I got it taken care of. Thank you,
okay.
Bunny.
So, as is, let's go ahead and start off with our special guest, because since their phone is actually dying faster than it is able to charge, Mike, why don't you start off with the interview with our special guest here, and you introduce everybody to our former officer.
Sure, I'm just really proud to be able to bring strategic noncompliance, a former law enforcement officer, so we can get a cop's perspective as to what we're doing here. Former cop by the name of Nick Stacy. Say hi, Nick.
Hello.
So let's get right into it, man. My audience and Bunny's audience are probably curious to know. Tell us about how what first got you interested in law enforcement to start with, and tell us all the way up until the point to where you were raided by the state police. Like, could you just go up through that whole thing for us?
Absolutely. Well, it all began, I was about 12 or 13 years old, and me and some friends of mine thought it would be a great idea to take some leftover M80s from the 4th of July, and we went into this trailer park and started blowing up mailboxes. And what seemed to be a great, harmless childhood pastime turned into like fear when this big African American guy with a star on his chest or on a chain came out of one of the houses. And at that point, I didn't know it yet, but I realized that I had just blown up the mailbox of Captain Youngblood from the Oregon State Troopers.
Oh, wow. And this happened, how old were you?
I was about 12 or 13.
Okay. The story's getting good from the beginning. Okay, let's keep going.
And basically, I didn't know this, but when I was in high school, I ended up dating a beautiful young lady, still beautiful, actually, believe it or not. Her name is Danae Youngblood, and I never put the two together until I went home for dinner one night, and I realized that Captain Youngblood was her father. And he recognized me right away with the big Elvis hair and, and all the diamond rings and stuff. He recognized me right away, and so I had to make a decision real quick, and I had to decide whether, I wanted to do as I thought was right and to apologize for blowing up his mailbox years before, or if I was just going to wait and see if he said anything about it. And so ultimately the decision I made was to say, hey, when I was a kid, I remember you, bruh. I blew up your mailbox. I was trying to have some fun. I want to say I'm sorry, and come to you as a man. And he shook my hand and he thanked me. Well, fast forward a little bit, his daughter got pregnant. This was after me and her had split up. And he threatened me. He said, look, you need to be there for my daughter. You need to be there for this child. And when it came out that it wasn't mine, he felt embarrassed, and I had told him, all these years I'd been interested in law enforcement. Can you help me? And so he got me, involved in the cadet program with the sheriff's office, and ever since then I kind of like.
Now the cadet.
Go ahead, Mike.
Just so people know at home, the cadets are kind of, is that anything like the Explorer program where they start people off as early 20-somethings, late teens, and they go out and help with law enforcement to like training wheels towards becoming a cop? Is that the same kind of thing?
Yeah. when you start out early on in a cadet program, at least in Jackson County, where I was, which is in Southern Oregon for those who don't know. You know, before you were 16 years old, if you were a cadet, you helped out with like at the juvenile department, doing chores there, doing their green corps or whatever they called it. Their you know, they had like a garden for the juvenile offenders, and they'd go out and they'd grow stuff and sell it at farmers markets, and the money went to the juvenile department or to pay off their restitution or whatever. And so that's what we did until I got my license. And you know, once I turned 16, I got my license and everything. I had to go through a series of testing and to be sure that I could conduct myself appropriately out in the field, and it became, just as you said, I couldn't have said it better myself, Mr. Blue Hair, training wheels for law enforcement.
So let's get into your first job as a cop. What kind of stuff did you do? And I know your background. You're kind of like a prodigy cop, right? I mean, like you're one of those people that was blessed with a large IQ, so they kind of fast tracked you, right?
They did, absolutely. I did not. I mean, it's kind of like, I compare it to what if like Ted Nugent went into the Army, right? Like, he wouldn't be treated like everybody else.
Right.
And so, you know, I feel like I didn't necessarily get a lot of the training and a lot of the education that other officers had got, due to the, I mean, you know, due to the fact that, you know, they say that my IQ was a lot higher than most, and that it was that it was very important that the people understand that, you know, just having a large IQ isn't, it's not a qualifier for anything by any means. And the fact that I was fast tracked in law enforcement the way that I was is honestly, it doesn't do me any good. It doesn't do the people any good, but I wanted to do good. So I was kind of fast tracked with it, and they gave me a list of what they thought to be impossible responsibilities and tasks. And you know, whenever I delivered, they were happy with that, and so they didn't really feel too much of a need to go back to any of that, you know, training or any of that education that I feel that I had missed.
I got you. So they gave you, basically, they're trying to haze you out of existence in the beginning with workload, and you ended up being able to perform all those tasks, correct?
Correct.
I'm sure people above your pay grade were taking notice of that the entire time.
Yeah, I was always kind of brought out to be the young buck, the, you know, kind of that smart aleck that you know, thought that he was better or knew more than anybody else. And to be completely honest, I think the exact opposite. You know, Eleanor Roosevelt in 1960 said, "The more you know, the better off you are." And you know, I stand by that. I think that that's very important.
Right on. So you were in law enforcement, what, like about a year and a half, correct?
Yeah, just going on 2 years.
Just going on 2 years. And what rank did you get to in that short period of time?
It was safety enforcement agent, second lieutenant.
Okay. And just give the people at home, you know, your top 3 most frequent type duties that you would do.
A lot of the time, you know,
what my job consisted of was paperwork. I mean, anybody who's ever been in law enforcement can tell you that there's, if you open a file or if you're putting anything in a file, there's at least 300 pieces of paper in that file that you have to write something on front and back. Another one would be the skip tracing aspect of it, locating wanted persons or locating persons of interest. That's where I kind of thrived, because I will sit at the top of a tree in front of your house for 72 hours until I know, for sure that my fugitive's in there.
Okay, so they had you looking. A big portion of your job was paperwork, as you said, and also your second most frequent thing was looking for persons of interest, like warrant skippers or
Yeah,
people that they needed to serve warrants on, and you were collecting that type of intelligence.
absolutely, yeah. And I'd have to document my actions while collecting that intelligence as well, which was kind of, well, I mean, if you can imagine a skinny guy in a tree, with a camera pointed at himself, trying to document stuff and not be seen. I mean, it's
Did you
it's
do
it's
a lot of setting in cars and doing the same thing from vehicles or that kind of thing?
We were supposed to be. I have a philosophy: I will not sit in a parked car at night because that makes me a sitting duck. I'd much rather be up against a brick wall or, standing somewhere that's not, in a car, you're so constricted and you're,
Right.
you just
Your
can't.
knees are bent up and people can get behind you.
Right.
There's a YouTube channel that I like. It's called LEO Affairs, and it's a roundtable discussion. I recommend this to every cop that I'm friendly with because I think it's interesting. But it's a roundtable discussion YouTube channel, and they talk about current law enforcement technologies. They talk about all the big headlines when they come through, and I recommend you check it out, Nick. I think you might find it interesting. But when I was watching, LEO Roundtable the other day, they were talking about this patrol car, and it's got an active scanner behind it. It's like a 60-degree arc behind from the cone starts from the scanner from the perspective of behind the officer's head while they're sitting in the car, and it scans behind them, and it will literally give them an audible tone and show them on the dashboard a little dot where the movement is. So I think that's kind of interesting, that would kind of allay your fear. But I can also see the officers getting disciplinary reviews for sneaking up behind their friend and tossing trash up behind their car to freak them out,
Right.
And to point out
Right.
that tech has actually is quite often used in new vehicles for for backup sensors for dealing with potential pedestrians. It's not as advanced as what those officers have, but I have seen I've seen the new vehicles have it where if you're about ready to hit something or there's a pedestrian or a vehicle that moves right behind you when you're trying to back up. So it's quite interesting how that tech is actually advancing.
Right on.
Oh yeah, totally.
So another quick question. So how did you first hear of me, Nick? I love this story. Like I do.
Oh
I
my
think it's
goodness.
great.
Okay, so the first time I heard of you about you, it wasn't even about you as a person. It was just a saying. I was off duty. I was working private security at an apartment complex, and one of the superiors had given me a call and said, "Hey, you got to go right now." So we did. Got to the scene. Guy was belligerent and confrontational. We took him into custody on a disorderly conduct. And one of the staff sergeants came up and goes, oh my goodness, watch how you're doing that because you don't want to get blue haired." Meaning put on the spot, called out, being, the person that shows up with the oinking noises on YouTube. And,
right on.
Yeah, and so that was the first time I'd ever heard the term blue hair, and then we had met through, you know, a mutual source later on down the road, and I realized what "don't get blue haired" actually meant. But it's not always a bad thing to get blue haired. I mean, you know, he gets
Yeah,
kudos too.
yeah. I've always, I think that's a reason why there's more cops than sometimes I'd like to admit that watch my YouTube channel. Is I've prided myself in being fair. I am an anarchist. I have my authoritarian bias, but when I see cops doing things that are positive, that I think you know, a citizen should be doing, you know, but there's only cops there to do it. I give them credit. There's videos that have "thank you" in the title of it, and it's not that I'm a cop sucker or I'm a bootlicker, but like, you know, good deeds deserve credit. You know, when cops show
Absolutely.
humanity through their uniform, I think it's important. So I think that might have something to do with the fact that some cops approve of what I do and you know, are friendly to me.
Hey, absolutely. There's two phrases professionally that I like. Well, three actually. The first is "in honor there is hope." And the second is "where mercy is shown, mercy is given." And number three is "you never stood in that man's shoes or saw things through his eyes or stood and watched with helpless hands as the heart inside you dies. So help your brother along the way, no matter where he starts. For the same God that made you made him too, these men with humble hearts." So
Wow.
I
So
know deep stuff.
yeah, man. I mean, that's. Can you say the very last phrase, because that was quite just awesome? Can you say it again?
Absolutely. You never stood in that man's shoes or saw things through his eyes, or stood and watched with helpless hands as the heart inside you dies. So help your brother along the way, no matter where he starts. For the same God that made you made him too, these men with humble hearts.
Wow. So that speaks to your philosophy or your way of going about your job as a LEO, and I could totally see how the rest of the system that thrives on putting sociopaths in positions of power, I could see how you having this attitude would make you put a target on your back. You know, I've heard stories from you in the past about when you take people into custody, you would, like, you know, give them a cigarette before you took them in. Can you get into that about your philosophy about how you treat people that are maybe freaking out or having a bad experience when you're taking them into custody? Can you share with
Well,
the audience that stuff?
yeah, absolutely. Ultimately, whenever you're contacting somebody in an LEO position, you make contact with them and their day is ruined right away because the police are there, right? So, you know, if you do end up having to take them into custody, I like to give them, you know, a cigarette, bottle of water, you know, give them a few words of hope. And, you know, it's very important to me that they go in the jail feeling better than they did coming out. If they're tweakers and on methamphetamine and running amok, then maybe I'll buy them a burger. I don't want them to starve in there, you know. Um, you know, if they get arrested without a shirt on, I'll give them a shirt out of my trunk. You know, I just try to show them that no matter what, you know, we came from the same creator. Maybe we came from different creators. Regardless, we're both here doing, you know, human things on this planet, and they're a human being just like me. And I don't think that any piece of tin on my chest should dictate how they're treated. Maybe they made mistakes. Guess what? I blew up a captain's mailbox. Like, you know, regardless, I mean, I was out running amok, and guess what? Later, that captain, you know, I was sitting across the table from him, and he was looking at me like, "I know who you are, punk, but I'm gonna stay cool," you know. And I believe that I should show them just as much respect and courtesy as they show me.
Well, I wish you know, your attitude towards the people that you were contacting and taking into custody as a law enforcement officer was more common than not. But unfortunately, it's not very common. A lot of people allow the badge and the way that the citizenry interact with them to pollute their minds. I mean, there's something that I've seen from the outside in, observing law enforcement, that the people that cops interact with end up brainwashing them to have a overinflated sense of importance. And what I mean by this is people always look to cops for the answers when it's not really the cop's job. You know, there's so many times when I've seen people like yelling at cops in indignation. They're yelling, "It's your job to tell me what my rights are," or "You're supposed to tell me what my rights are," or in any number of things. And I'm sitting there thinking, no, a cop's job is to, contact a person when they have reasonable, articulatable suspicion that a crime has occurred. A cop's job is supposed to get the maximum amount of data documented for the DA so that they can hem somebody up for as long as possible. I mean, those are the three little pillars. I mean,
wow, you got that verbatim. You get arrested a lot, Mr. Blue Hair?
I've been arrested a few times, but academically, I know these things. I mean, that's the core of their job. And I find it annoying and disheartening. So few people actually know their rights, and
it's a shame, but it's not law enforcement's job to inform people of their rights. It's their job if they're an American,
Well said. One of my few arrests that you can find on YouTube, I think there's actually two of them, but I'm standing up on a wall and RRT squad is coming up to me. And this is when they were alleging that I committed disorderly conduct and improper position on the highway because there was a protest at the backside of City Hall, and RRT squad, our cops in riot gear, were blocking off the street at both ends, and they had TriMet officials at both ends of the street that they alleged that I committed discon by blocking traffic. But I had video of all this. That they were so going to get their backsides handed to them if I actually had to go to a jury trial over this. But RRT walk up to me and they look up at me and they're like, "Mike, you're under arrest." I'm like, "Seriously? Really?" And they're like, "Yeah, can you step down?" I'm like, "Yeah, can somebody hold my camera?" So one of the RRT guys, I handed the camera down to him. And I said, "Okay, I'm gonna step off the wall and put my hands behind my back for you." And they're all, that's cool. And the cop actually, one of the RRT guys, I forget his name, but he our cops in full riot gear. They look like emo Ninja Turtles, like these armor dudes. He like holds his hand up and like I take his hand and he slowly lowers me down and I put my hands behind my back for him. Later on, when we're talking about 10 minutes later, because they took us into City Hall so they could separate us from the crowd, because a lot of times when people that are a little more high profile like me in the anarchist community are taken into custody, you'll get...
That puts a target on them.
Right. It puts a target on them, and there's a large group of anarchists, like a phalanx of people in black ninja outfits that try to surround the cops and de-arrest. So they were concerned for that. So they took me inside City Hall, and the cop made a joke. He said he felt like I was a little fairy princess, that he was lowering me off the wall, and that was hilarious. But the point I wanted to make was about that arrest video, and I'll link to that when I re-upload this and put it in segments on YouTube. But the point I wanted to make, because you were talking about people not knowing their rights and it's their job, is the first thing the cop said to me, like after I got down to the wall and I put my hands behind my back like I was praying, because the best way to be put in handcuffs, in my humble experience, because I've been arrested a lot, is as a homeless person, because my history as I've been homeless for years, is to put your hands behind your back like you're praying, because that orients your wrist in a way that when the cuffs go on, that it's your arms aren't twisted and you're not causing yourself pain. So if you explain to the officer, "I'm going to slowly turn around for you and I'm going to put my hands behind my back like I'm praying," and that puts the cop at ease, and that's important if you don't want the cuffs on twisted, But anywho, right on. So you understand what I'm talking about with the wrist, so the people at home don't think I'm being full of crap there, Mr. Stacy. Like this?
No, yeah, that's the only way to wear cuffs. If you're not going to wear cuffs that way, then you're going to be in discomfort and you're going to hate the position that you're in, being in handcuffs. I mean, you hate it anyway, but it's going to be more more of a hateful experience.
That's hilarious. Anarchist being arrested advice being validated by a cop. I think that's the first time for YouTube history. But okay, so the first thing the sergeant on the scene, as the guy lowers me off the wall, is I asked, "Why am I being arrested?" And he says, "I did. You didn't. Why were you in the street?" He says to me, and I said, "I invoked my right to remain silent. I would like to speak to a lawyer, please." And the sergeant looks at me and smiled. And he's like, "Perfect." And then they took me. You know, there's nothing you can say. I have to stress this for the people at home. There's nothing you can say to a cop that's going to help or hurt you while you're being taken into custody or while you're being detained. There's a reason why it says in the Miranda. Can I get an amen there, Mr. Stacy? Or
amen to that, brother. I'm right behind you on that.
Yeah, there's a reason why in the Miranda rights it says anything you say can and will be used against you. It doesn't say, hey, if you explain yourself really saliently and you convince the cop of your side of the story, then you're gonna go home and not be in handcuffs. It doesn't say that. It says can and will, not it might be used, but it will be used. And it's my experience academically, what I've understand about the law is that cops can't even make statements in jury trial that can exonerate you, because the district attorney will say that's hearsay. Like you can't say officer such and such, but I told you such and such. That gets thrown out of court. When academically, I'm not a lawyer, I can't give legal advice, but that's what I've seen by reading trial transcripts and whatnot. Is that not the reality of it, Nick?
No, it is. At that point, it becomes third-party circumstantial evidence, and gets thrown out due to it being, I guess, technical hearsay. I've gone. There was a case that I had worked. It was a 19-year-old girl, and she was making a joke in she was in the community, just going about her day, whatever, and she happened to be right behind a police officer at Starbucks here in Portland, and she was with her man, and her man, was all like, made some kind of comment, alleging that they were going to be intimate later in the day, and she goes, "Oh, well, I guess you'll have to buy me coffee then." And this poor young lady was arrested for solicitation of prostitution. And, I fully believed the story after going through video surveillance footage and by listening to five or six different witness accounts of other Starbucks patrons. And ultimately she was let off and the charges were dismissed, and she was compensated for her incarceration period. But she told the police officer that actually took her into custody. I just kind of heard about it, and to be honest, I was trying to step on some toes a little bit because I thought it was a bit outrageous, which is why I got involved. But the initial officer, she said, "Well, I told you that from the first minute, and you just, you just took me in like I was nothing, let my boyfriend go, and the whole 9 yards." And that was kind of a situation like that. Like, because she introduced that into the record, it made anything that she said about all of that hearsay. Yeah, it was very confusing. I didn't understand hardly at all that entire court case. It seemed like a circus act, like, we're going into the Hall of Freaks, Yeah,
that's amazing. Thank you for giving that bit of a insight from a LEO perspective. So if there's anything you wanted to add or say to other officers about the state of policing, in 21st century America right now, what would it be? About the most common tactics or common attitudes you see towards cops. What would be your statement or thoughts about that to them specifically?
Well, to them specifically, I just want to say, my brothers and sisters, I support exactly what you do. I support exactly what you have been sworn to do. I do not agree with a lot of the beliefs and the ways that the job is carried out. I mean, if you're on the job, you're on the job, whatever. But just remember that anytime that you put on a uniform, anytime that anybody puts on a uniform, I can't really say too much because I'm only a quarter of a century old here. There's people been doing it a lot longer than me. But whenever that uniform goes on, you're a representative for every citizen of the United States of America. And if you behave or say, or, if you do anything out of character, is that something that you'd want, your mother, your grandmother, your great-grandmother, your son, your daughter, is that something that you would want them to have pride in? I mean, that's just kind of how I focus mainly. Of course, we go by the letter of the law, but I try to focus more on my code of ethics, my personal code of ethics, when I'm out doing anything. Now, given the fact that I am not a law enforcement official anymore, I'm still on that totem pole with my fugitive recovery and private and public security. I support the thin blue line, but I think that the whole Blue Lives Matter thing is a bunch of crap.
Okay, let's get into that. Can you make the distinction for the people listening at home between the thin blue line and the Blue Lives Matter thing?
I think the thin blue line, I think is important because we are okay, here's a metaphor for everybody at home and on the air, right? There is no line between love and hate, but there is a Great Wall of China with posted sentries every 20 miles. It's kind of something to think about when you think of the thin blue line, right? We just want to restore order, like the line in the yin and yang. We just want everything to go together. And a lot of the times it gets taken out of hand and carried away. And I think that that's where the Blue Lives Matter really comes in. Like, no kidding, your life matters? Nuh-uh. So does that African American that lives down the road. So does a Mexican guy that lives around the corner. So does a guy from Sweden and Spain. And, I mean, what is Blue Lives Matter really symbolize besides the compartmentalization of a gang-like aura?
Right.
Like, what is that? Like, I mean, okay, so the Bloods have red, the Crips have blue, right? And so since blue's already taken, it's just Blue Lives Matter.
Right. Are they desecrate the American flag with that blue line on it? I refer to it a lot, from being an extreme anti-authoritarian, from being an anarchist. I really do associate it as being a gang, because unfortunately we live in a society where plutocratic rule is the du jour of the day. Unfortunately, after you get to a certain point in our society, you're so rich and you're so powerful that laws don't apply to you. And cops they've been converted slowly, generationally, to me, as far as I'm concerned, as a nothing more than a street gang that works for the rich. I mean, and that's a deep-seated societal problem. I mean, I don't think this problem can be addressed by just reforming law enforcement by itself, but this is a problem with our entire society, that it's not the justice system, it's just us and our rich friends and then everybody else. So that's my issue. That's how I view it, is that police are starting to, them mentality is really dangerous because they start acting like a street gang. They're just more well equipped and more organized than the other street gangs.
I agree. I think that and like I said before, ladies and gentlemen, I am in no way attempting to disrespect the Brotherhood of the Boys in Blue or anything like that. However, I believe that this whole thing has been brought so over the top. Like, I mean, I have my own opinions that I'll just keep to myself about the whole Black Lives Matter thing. But no matter what color, no matter what race, no matter what, I believe that, all lives matter, just to be as general as whatever. But for somebody to go into, like, even the color uniform, right? Like, blue lives matter. What about green lives matter for our border patrol and customs agents? The jerkwads that decided to come in and raid my house and take my career and everything, and not.
Sure. I think we just lost Nick. Oh, there he is.
Yo.
Nick. Okay, Nick's in transit right now. Are you there, brother?
Yeah, I'm here. Are you there?
Okay, we lost you for a second. I don't want to hog you, so I'm sure, Bunny, you're probably chomping at the bit to get some more of your perspective out here. Do you have anything for Nick? I'm going to shut up and take a back seat for a while.
Actually, no, I don't. What I've been doing busy is just dealing with the slider bar, so this way he's more audible. And so feel free to continue doing the interview and all that stuff. I'm just trying to make sure, since you're louder than him, I'm constantly moving this bar up and down. I figured out to where the audio is somewhat equalized, so I'm focusing on that part. So go ahead and keep going, man.
Okay, sure. Yeah, you know what? Here's one for you. I think one of the biggest problems that hinders any kind of substantive police reform in this country is twofold, Nick, and I'd love to know your thoughts on this, right? So there's something called the largest police union in the country is the Fraternal Order of Police, and they look out for the workers, for more law enforcement officers than any other union in the country, and their biggest union is out of California. And back in 1972, the Grand Lodge of the Fraternal Order of Police, which is the California state union there, created something manipulating two Supreme Court decisions. I don't remember the names of the decisions, but I'll put them in the info description underneath this video when it hits the interweb. But basically, they created something called the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights. And the LEO Bill of Rights is, and it was statewide throughout California. And it gives cops special legal protections and treatment in regards to how they're questioned by internal affairs. So when a cop is investigated, they do not get the same standard of law and the same treatment as a regular citizen. And it's set up to give cops a succinct advantage. And I won't go through all the advantages, but please do, if you're watching this on the interweb, just check it out down below, and you'll see how all these loopholes can be easily used to give cops an advantage. And it makes it harder for cops to be prosecuted civilly and criminally. That aspect acts as a hindrance to there being any substantive police reform, because it warps the public's perception of cops. It makes them appear as if though there's quite a bit less crime committed by cops because there's fewer convictions. And also, there's something called qualified immunity. And qualified immunity, I'm sure you're familiar, Nick, but let me finish then. Okay, so we're almost lost my train of thought. Qualified immunity raises the legal standard. Like I said, I can't. I'm going to make a little disclaimer here for the interweb in case there's some cop that doesn't like me that's watching this. I can't give legal advice, but I academically have read this stuff. But if there's a question you have about anything I say, dear viewers, consult a lawyer and talk to them about it. But my understanding of qualified immunity is this: there's
easy sometimes.
It's what?
You said get a lawyer, and I said, or get two, because they're cheesy sometimes.
Oh, right. Sometimes you have to fire your lawyer because they just don't know what they're doing. But
No, or work for them, and they never do anything for you.
right. But so there's something called mens rea, which is guilty mind. It means intent to commit a crime, and then corpus delicti. These things are basically corpus delicti is the body of the crime, the actual physical evidence that you committed a crime, and the intent to do it. Well, what qualified immunity does for cops that it doesn't do for anyone else, cops and judges and prosecutors and people in the system get qualified immunity, and the prosecution and judges get even a higher version of this. But those essential elements to prove that a cop committed a crime or did something untoward civilly and criminally, is that standard is set so much higher that that many lawyers won't even touch a case against a cop because it's just so hard to actually get a conviction. So those are the two biggest hindrances to any kind of substantive police reform in this country. And I just want to know your thoughts about that, Nick. Have you thought about these two legal protections that are extended to cops that aren't extended to other folks?
Well, ultimately, I never got to really experience them except for when I was being sued, for brutality, over exertion of force, whatever. When everything that went down with me, they terminated my position and made me pretty much invisible prior to the FBI and Department of Homeland Security coming down on me. So I never really experienced too much of that for any reason, and I try not to do anything to get prosecuted under.
I got you.
And that's year's resolution is this year, no felonies and only a few misdemeanors. No, I kid. But I think that ultimately, it goes back to that quote from Gandhi that Elvis made public that I had said earlier, help your brother along the way, no matter where he starts, for the same God that made you made him too. Why is it that persons of government and persons of political interest are given these exemptions, basically, extra liberties, if you will, to be protected like that? Ultimately, whether I'm the guy wearing the handcuffs on my belt or on my wrist, it don't matter. If something goes down, then I should be liable for what it is that has gone down. Just like, oh, thank goodness my breakfast has arrived. But it just like if, I'm a criminal on the run doing a bunch of illegal stuff, I'm going to be held accountable.
Yeah, that's my biggest issue with both those legal protections that cops have that other folks don't, is that, we're trained as children when we grow up in this culture of what I would call American exceptionalism. There's this myth of American exceptionalism that our country is better than other countries because of, my Constitution or my republic or my American values. But we are taught, in brainwashed as children, I believe, into believing that, quote, everyone's equal under the law. Like, the law is going to treat everyone equally. And that's just not the case. Everyone's not equal under the law. It's like Animal Farm, all animals are created equal, but some animals are more equal than others. That famous book by George Orwell.
Yeah. Hey, I'm gonna pop in real fast here, guys. I just want to thank Donovan Jetpack on Mixer for following. Also, I wanted to point out thank for Luke Proster, who joined my Patreon, $1 Patreon thing a few hours ago. Go ahead, continue, Mike.
I need to peek at my chat because I have to apologize to people that are watching this on my channel. I can't look at my chat because there's this weird thing over it. And the way this interface works is there's 3 windows that are open on my laptop, and I can't even see my chat. So I just have to apologize to people because I'm not able to look at it. But yeah, I was talking about Animal Farm. Have you read 1984, Nick, or Animal Farm?
Both, actually.
What are your thoughts about the warrior cop mentality? Like specifically, have you heard of a book called Rise of the Warrior Cop by Radley Balko?
I have heard of the book, and ironically enough, when I had tried to order it online, they said that it was removed from shelves.
Oh, weird. I guess you'll probably have to get a PDF. But this whole, the Pentagon's 1033 program where they give away free military hardware to law enforcement agencies countrywide and only charge them for the shipping. What are your thoughts about all this stuff being given to cops and the warrior cop mentality? How do you think that's affecting the greater law enforcement community?
Well, ultimately, I think that if anybody, any agency, any government body, whatever, wants to help with the protect and serve, remember that's what is sworn to for it to be about. Not I wrote 6,000 traffic tickets and I arrested so many people, because it's not a contest. You know, taking people into custody and providing a service for the community it should not be about a contest. There should be no notch in the belt, no mark in the back of the cap. And I've been guilty of that too. Say, oh, well, hey, I've been involved in this many, arrests. But ultimately, I think that if the technology and the intel that is given to law enforcement agencies is properly honed and distributed, I think that it could be a very good thing. But ultimately, when you walk down a hallway, if you walk down a hallway with your chest in the air because of the uniform you're wearing, then sorry, but I ain't got nothing for you, bruh. I mean, I don't know. I don't know a lot of people that think about everything perhaps the way I do. Not saying that, my way of thinking is any better than most or all or whatever, but I just believe in being there. And whenever you arrest somebody, I believe that it's part of my job or our job, the thin blue line, the thin green line, both, I believe it's part of our jobs to sit in the back and say, so what's wrong with you, William? Why are you messing up right now? I understand you got a backslide, but now you've hit rock bottom. Let's go up to the top together, And
so you think it's a moral responsibility that's incumbent on other officers to keep each other from doing immoral things? I'm trying to understand what you mean by that. Is that?
That's exactly what I mean. Exactly. Okay. If it's kind of like the philosophy of, a woman drops a $20 bill for groceries in the store and someone comes by and goes finders keepers and picks it up and runs away. That's kind of what what we're doing. And don't get me wrong, I love and respect the work you do, Mr. Blue Hair, and what Film the Police PDX is all about. And Bunny Boots, I've talked to you for a while, and I love and respect what you do too. But at the same time, why is there a need for police accountability? Oh, wait, it's because the officers can't be accountable for their dang selves, I mean, I don't know. Did you steal that cookie out of the cookie jar? Oh, no, I didn't. I swear it was the federal government. It wasn't me,
I got you. Okay, I'm finally able to see my live chat. So let me say hi to people. Thanks, Felipe Hemming of the Hemming Law Firm, Black Coat Media. Thanks for saying hi. King 9 will not return. Hey, what's up, guys? Mr. Vincent, hey. Yeah, when you were going through your Blue Lives or your Blue Line stuff, Felipe was saying status mumbo jumbo. He's more of an anarchist type,
Right on.
but I was just portraying. I'm glad that there's not a lot of vitriol about you in my chat, because I have nothing but respect for you, Nick. And as far as I'm concerned, you're the type of cop that gets weeded out of the system because you're a good, decent, moral human being. And my issues is not really with cops. Period. My issue is the system is so horribly broken, as far as any real accountability and any real decent public service, in my humble opinion, that it needs to be reformed to the point to where it's unrecognizable from what it is today, or that the idea of policing needs to be abolished. And that's my humble opinion. But I have nothing but respect and love for Nick, just because I know you as a person, and there's many cops that, that if they weren't wearing the uniform, we could be buds, but it's just too hard right now, for me to, it excuses me out the type of personalities that are attracted to law enforcement, the majority of the personalities, and that's the mentality of a sociopath. Unfortunately, sociopaths, they're attracted to law enforcement because of those legal protections and because it's a area that they can go and hide, embed themselves in, and try to extract the maximum amount of advantage for themselves, just because of the authority and privileges that they're granted because they are a cop. And the structural organization of law enforcement is going to always attract those type personalities until it's changed. And that's the big problem. It's like people that are compassionate, people that are kind to other people, people that have a moral compass, and they're more likely to be influenced by their moral compass and their own internal governor as to what is right and what is wrong, and that dictates their actions, aren't the majority of folks that are attracted to law enforcement careers, unfortunately. And that's my issue, is that these people seem to thrive. They end up getting promotions, and they end up being rising through the ranks of law enforcement to command level. And I'll give an example. Okay, there's something called arbitration and a rehire clause.
If I may interject just very briefly, I just got an update from a friend of mine named Monty Nicholson with the FBI, and he had just informed me that there were about 18 fatalities in Florida as of right now. I just wanted to let you know that number went from 2 to 18 real quick. So,
That's horrible. That's
so I wanted to add that just for maybe the listeners at home. I know we were talking about it earlier, and for you guys as well, and for anybody who might be listening from Florida, my heart goes out to you guys. Anyway, as you were saying, Mr. Blue Hair.
Oh, my anti-authoritarian rants are ad nauseum at this point. My listeners have heard me go off on these forever. So, no, but I mean, hats off to you, Nick, for just being the person that you are. And I'm not filleting
blue. Very much.
I'm not filleting blue pole right now. I'm just giving credit where credit is due. I mean, you're stellar dude. I've known you for about a year now. We don't hang out very often, but everything I've researched. When I first met you, I politely demanded your law enforcement ID, and then I had some folks I know vet you. And you've never had any. You've had a few. So I've looked at your record and stuff. What can be found on the interweb, and you've never had any sustained use of force complaints against you, no convictions. You've never had any instances of police brutality. You've been accused of some BS before and harassed. I've seen that, legally harassed by people that are accusing you of things that you didn't do.
Correct.
but that's all I could find. Yeah, I'm watching Florida now on my 50-inch behind me, and that's horrible. And let's just get out of my anti-authoritarian rant for a bit. And I'm gonna. I haven't even looked at the news. I'll just let Nick and Mr. Boots tell people what's going on in Florida.
All right. Well, I'm also chiming in since I haven't talked too much. Currently over in Florida, a high school was shot up by a person. The press have released a name, and people are actively going through and trying to find this person's social media and all that stuff. It will be interesting how things go, but as is, the casualties is injured and deaths are above 20, it looks like. It's hard to say the full extent of those that have died. There has been quite a bit of shocking footage that has come from within the school that has been posted on social media, but please don't hound the families and all that stuff. Right now, there are people that are speaking out against the press that have been hounding the families, trying to get ask questions and get interviews.
What are the
and all
odds
that
it's
stuff.
on Valentine's Day too? Like, is it because of a heavy heart, or is it out of remembrance of the St. Valentine's Day massacre?
I don't know the specifics. No one really has any information on the guy's motivations. As I said, it will take time for the investigation to get through in order for that. But chances are, since it is a Valentine's Day, there is probably some sort of either personal semblance for remembering, like maybe the Valentine's Day massacre that happened back during the mafia times, or it could be just the guy felt lonely or whatever and wanted to go out with a bang or something like that, but he ended up surrendering to the police, it looks like, and is alive and well in police custody.
Well, if I had any words that I could say to the alleged shooter, because I mean, obviously, you know, we're not at liberty to be his judge, his jury, and his prosecutor. If I had any words to say to the alleged shooter, all I could think to say, I was talking about this with my grandmother earlier. If I could just tell him one thing to maybe, you know, help brighten the day a little bit. You know, there's nearly 20 people who lost their lives because of this guy's actions. And even though I don't support or condone any of that, I'm just here to say, you know, for the same God that made you, made me, right? So I love you, brother, and hopefully, you know, you can seek some help that'll help you get on with your life, because God knows life in the Gray Bar Motel isn't all that fun when you ain't got windows.
Yeah, and also this isn't the only shooting that's happened today. Over at Fort Meade, there was a shooting incident by the NSA building too, but the information on that specific incident is very sketchy at the moment, so it's unknown specifically what is going on. It's just known that there was a vehicle that drove through a barrier of some sort, and there was shots fired, and that's
from
the last
multiple, I believe. I'm not too sure. That the reason I didn't mention it was due to the brevity of, you know, of the incident itself.
Yeah, well, it's just I wanted to point something out. This isn't the only big thing shooting incident that is catching headlines today. So it's quite interesting we got two going on a Valentine's Day, and it's hard to say what the other one what exactly is going on there. So there's a lot of different social media conspiracies going on about the other one because of the pictures that have been published so far of the scene.
Sure, and I would imagine that the brevity of the details are also a part of that.
Yeah. So we might as well go ahead and continue on, Mike, with the interview and that stuff. I don't know where you want to take it from here.
Sure, I want to ask Nick because I want to take off in about a half hour, so we got about a half hour left because. You know, I have social to do with Nick, and yeah, anywho. So, let's get into how you ended up, you know, no longer a law enforcement officer. Nick, can you go through this?
Absolutely. Well, I'd just like to say, with the cooperation of my staff at Nick Stacy LLC, um, as well as the cooperation from those at Film and Police Portland, and my attorneys, Stephen Howes, Martin Cohen, Rich Cohen, and Ethan Levy. I want to thank you all very much for making this conversation able to happen, because now I can actually talk about it. So ultimately, what happened was the date was the 23rd of May, 2016. The time was 0600 hours. I was just getting off work at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was staking out a guy's house. He, if I remember correctly, he had like 53 counts of sexual crimes against women and children. I was staking out his house all night. And I had just got home, and I sat down on the couch. I turned on the news, the 6 o'clock news, and I was starting to fall asleep. And I was still in my gear, my vest, my tack vest, my duty belt, everything, leg holsters, the whole 9 yards. And I was just starting to fall asleep, and next thing I know, my front door comes crashing down on the floor, and there's a bunch of guys with AR-15s and riot shields that are meeting me face to face that morning, ordering me to put my hands in the air.
So wait, just quickly. So there's a CERT team, like a breach team, busting in your house, and they're like they would do a felony warrant, like a no-knock warrant type thing?
Yeah, like,
okay.
I mean, I could have been on the terrorist watch list for all I know.
Wow.
And so yeah, they came in. It was Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, and their less than professional and inadequate lady detective, whom I will remain nameless because that would be indiscreet, and as well as 2 state troopers and let's see here, I'm looking through my records, 18 FBI agents and 22 Department of Homeland Security agents.
Wow, it's like they're raiding the Bin Laden compound. Let's wow.
I know. It's crazy. And so when that happened, of course, at the time, you know, me and my mother were living in this conjoined roommate situation. Ordered me, after they disarmed me, took my belt off, took my vest off and everything, took me outside, made me lay on my face in my apartment complex's parking lot in front of all my neighbors. They went door to door and told all my neighbors that I kidnapped, raped, and potentially murdered women and children.
Wow. That's
because those were the cases I worked. They tried to make me a defendant in every single case that my name was in the file on.
Right. So I want to keep the timeline, you know, linear so people can understand. So let's keep walking through it. So you're face down in the parking lot, and you're the cops are going door to door, knocking on your neighbors' doors at the same time, telling them that
correct.
They're alleging that you're a murderer and that you've raped and kidnapped multiple women. Correct.
And at the same time that that's going on, they pull my elderly mother out of the house and make her lay down on her face in the parking lot as well.
Wow. Now I don't, you know, I'm not trying to rub your nose in this at all, Nick, but now that gave you perspective. See, this is how most people are treated, you know, by enforcement. They'll show up, they'll intimidate, they'll scare, they'll make up lies. You know, you are getting the treatment at this point, you know,
that my brothers and sisters that are getting taken into custody, that's what they're getting. Yeah, that was a huge wake-up call for me.
Okay, so please do continue. Let's talk about your questioning and what happened next. How did you get off the asphalt? You know, face down and up, and
They
what happened next?
handcuffed and leg ironed me and my mother, walked us into our apartment, sat us down on the couch. And mind you, my employment, my connection with with my law enforcement agency was terminated the day before, not even 24 hours. So I was not questioned by internal affairs. I was not protected by any kind of government protection acts or anything like that.
Yeah,
I was a citizen.
yeah. Being a law nerd, even though I find it repugnant that cops get all these special protections, that's not the way they're supposed to do it. The way they're supposed to do it according to U.S. law and the Oregon the Public Officials Bill of Rights. That's what it's called here. It's not LEO Bill of Rights, but it's public officials. But basically, they were supposed to have you questioned at a quote reasonable hour during that. Normal business hours at your place of employment, and you're supposed to only be questioned by one person as a cop,
right?
Investigator, and they basically question you the same way they do everyone else. Good cop, bad cop. 2, 3, 4 cops asking you questions over the top of the other.
Yep.
Intimidating you and whatnot. So, I get excited during these interviews when it gets good, but I need to shut up and just let you go through it. So they brought you in your house, and what transpired?
They sat me down on the couch next to my mother, who was 65 years of age, and proceeded to read me the details of their quote-unquote warrant. Their warrant consisted of my name being misspelled, as well as a fictitious address that didn't even exist being placed as the warranted address. If we could get past the misspelling of my name, they legally only were obligated, allowed, and I give consent because I have nothing to hide, to search my person or my vehicle. But the address listed on the warrant, I live at 4707. They listed 48708, which is so far off.
Those are due process violations right there. The fact and the warrant's supposed to specifically name the things that they're supposed to take and the persons to be seized. That's your Fourth Amendment right there, just getting jackhammered by dozens of a mixed bag of state police and federal agents. Wow.
Well, and the worst thing about it is the list of property that they were alleging were personal and professional effects. That's what was listed on the warrant.
Talk about lack of specificity.
Well, exactly. And the fact that they could turn on somebody that, I don't know, but last time I remember, I was standing in that line with them just the same, saluting and raising my hand and saying what I needed to say, And it really rubbed me the wrong way when they did all that. So anyway, make a long story short, they're reading me the warrant. I'm telling them that they have no access to my residence and that they needed to leave promptly, and that I request the presence of a legal delegate.
Yeah, you're supposed to get your union rep at time of questioning if you like.
They were questioning me on the record, being recorded. The reason I won this lawsuit was because I had asked for my attorney from the get-go, and they continued to question me and try to force me to speak.
Right. According to, your rights as a law enforcement agent, they trampled all over those ones. So no wonder you won this lawsuit. But tell me about how, you told me a long time ago when this was first happening, when I was intensively asking you questions and you were not giving me the level of detail that I was satisfied with because it was still in the
Oh,
courts.
you
But
you want to know the real reason that I hate Clackamas County Sheriff's Office? That
well,
lady detective told me while she was questioning me, not only in the front of an alleged co-conspirator, my mother, but also in front of 8 federal agents who were staring at me, trying to persuade me what to say. She told me that I was better off killing myself because I could not prevail from this.
wow. So she was literally trying to manipulate you into uh 51 in yourself.
Yeah.
Wow. I think that's the 10 code in this area for dead body, right? 51.
Yep.
Yeah, that's crazy. Um, my heart goes out to you, especially now. Now you were investigating all these things, right? You were investigating the murders and the kidnappings and the sexual assaults. Now tell me about how they're going through your data that you were collecting at your work and trying to charge you with this stuff. This is fascinating to me. Tell me about that.
Well, ultimately, they wanted to name me as a subject or a co-conspirator due to the fact that I was fast-tracked through the process. I was the young buck, and myself and Mr. Blue Hair, mine and your mutual contact, Mr. Milstein, me and him took down a judge and 2 DAs for not processing cases that I was giving them.
Okay, so you filed bar complaints and star chamber complaints against
Yep.
lawyers for not doing, or DAs, you said?
DAs, yeah.
That's wow. Well, for those of you watching in Europe, the way our legal system is perverted here in America is district attorneys basically. Are you talking about that attorney Brock?
Brock is one of the guys that we had attempted to take down.
Okay.
I presented him with 59 cases, 3 domestic violence and 57 rape cases, and he refused to look at all of them because I was a rookie.
Okay, so that's what put the big target on your back. Because to get back to it, if you're in Europe and you don't you're not a legal nerd, district attorneys in America more often than not end up running counties. Sometimes they end up becoming like boss hog because of the incredible amount of power that the district attorney has in regards to being able to decide who gets prosecuted and who doesn't. That gives them an incredible amount of power, and district attorneys end up running whole counties in some instances. So,
well, and not to mention the district attorneys in the United States, for those in Europe and other countries, the district attorneys in the United States are the decision makers. Like, yeah, us police officers, and law enforcement officials, we can take your freedom, but it's up to them whether it actually gets taken or not.
right, it goes arresting officer, person being arrested. Then there's an arraignment. The first thing the judge and the judge and the court system reads off your charges. But in between that, the district attorney's office determines whether or not the cop was actually justified in arresting you and determining who can be arrested and who isn't. And the DA's office here in Portland are notorious for not prosecuting crimes against cop watchers. Like Rod Underhill in Multnomah County District Attorney and his office, if a cop watcher is attacked or their camera is smashed in Multnomah County, that person doesn't get prosecuted. If a cop watcher is assaulted or harassed in Multnomah County, that cop watcher doesn't get prosecuted. I have friends that have had their cameras snatched away from them and broken, and then the broken phone has been thrown on the ground in front of officers, and the officers took the person in that broke the cop watcher's camera, my friend Robbie, and the police did their job. They had reasonable articulable suspicion that the crime of what is it, criminal mischief.
Reasonable belief.
Right, reasonable belief, because the guy threw the broken halves of the phone on the ground in front of the police. The police did their job and arrested the guy for a property destruction crime, and the DA didn't even Underhill decided that, well, since it's a cop watcher, I guess they don't deserve the same protection. So I've been spit on, kicked, punched, pushed, and I don't even bother like to make a complaint against it because I know that the DA's office just hate me and all the other police accountability activists in this county. And I could just imagine the people that how people that have things on the line, like a business and a home that they own, and they have to remain respectable in their community, and what could the kind of manipulation and horror that could be brought against the citizenry by a corrupt or dirty DA is just incredible in this country. So they literally tried to charge you for all the name you as defendants in all the cases that you were running, all the stuff. Like, so you were investigating these potential murderers and these alleged kidnappers and rapists, and they tried to name you as a person of interest in all of them.
Correct. Yeah, 5,917 cases.
Wow. So over the 2 years that you were working as a law enforcement officer, you were collecting data and intelligence on 5,000 people.
Exactly.
Man, your workload was crazy fast. Like, you were doing a whole lot of stuff in a short period of time.
They were trying to phase me out. Ultimately, that's what I firmly believe. I believe that they were attempting to phase me out because I was this prodigy, right? Like, I've got a 161 IQ, and I passed, my police and my police intelligence exam with 104% with extra credit. And they were attempting to phase me out. What happened is when they conducted this raid, they did not anticipate that I would have 5 attorneys willing to work pro bono on my case. I have yet to pay any of these gentlemen, mind you. And they won me $74 million.
Wow.
To be paid out over the course of 45 years.
Well, that's one hell of a retirement, for them violating your rights like that. And what's the great travesty here, Nick? It is I understand you were treated horribly, but the great travesty is those hundreds of cases that you were working on, that you were collecting data for, these hundreds of examples of people that could have been brought to justice. Because you know what? People that are child rapists, child pornographers, kidnappers, murderers, I have zero compassion for. I mean, these are the people that, like, when I see that they're put in a cage, I'm like, I have a hard time, if they were guilty. I mean, a lot of times people are, convicted that are innocent, but if I reasonably believe that they are guilty, I don't have any compassion for them. So, that's the bad thing here. That's a great misjustice, is that all these people that were probably ended up going to be scumbags didn't get any kind of attention from law enforcement because of the fact that you were named as a person of interest in all your cases. Is wow. Like,
well, and my defendants walked free. I just talked to a guy, literally, I'm not even kidding. I wish I was kidding, but I'm not even kidding. The first case I worked, her name is Sarah. I'll leave her last name out, obviously, for confidentiality. She was 14 years old, and she was constantly, like, on a weekly basis experiencing sexual assault from her brother for, 5 or 6 times a week, Mike. And I went to school with her. I went to school with her brother. And when all of this played out, she said, well, I didn't want to make a case of it, but I trust you. I love you. You're family to me. You've always been there. And now that you're law enforcement, I'm not going to turn my back on what I told you in confidence. If you are obligated, by the Mandated Reporting Act, to report this and investigate this, I respect that. and I just want you to know that it's not betraying me because I told you in confidence years ago. And I just spoke with her, with the defendant in that case, her brother, like last week. I talked to him, and he was let free because of the feds taking me into custody and releasing me all within an hour.
Yeah, and they literally tried to manipulate you into murdering yourself.
Oh no, the lady detective from Clackamas County Sheriff's Office did say on audio, it was played at the court hearing, Mike, that she said on audio that you might as well just kill yourself because you're not gonna out these charges. And I actually tried, Mike. That's something that, you know, I didn't really talk about on the last stream, but you know, there was a period right afterwards, you know, I was homeless for like 6 months. I slept on your couch a couple of times.
I remember that. They seized, just so the people hearing online, I did put Nick up at my house for a while, and they froze out all of his bank accounts. They denied.
They're still frozen.
They froze out Nick's bank accounts. They denied him access to money. He lost his house. He lost his housing, his ability to get transportation, and he was literally sleeping on bus benches and the only respite Nick was getting was he was being able to go into Denny's and sit there and drink coffee and get online. These cops came after you, and I think they were trying to gaslight, manipulate, and torture you into basically offing yourself. And this is what happens to the good people in law enforcement. This is how the system chews them up and tries to spit
Mike,
them out.
I want to hop in here real fast. So you said your accounts are still frozen?
They're still frozen, and I found out that my business account for Nick Stacy LLC, I found out today that account has been frozen for about 2 months.
So the court case is finished, right? It's all over, and those are still all frozen.
It's going into arbitration because the feds refused to pay me any percentage of the $74.9 million that I had won in the case for defamation of character, loss of housing, loss of wages, loss of vocational opportunity.
This entire thing is still not over. It's still ongoing because they're refusing to pay. I'm correct in that, right?
I think we lost Nick. I don't see. He's back.
You back, Nick? Might take him a second here.
Yeah. I know he's driving to come here, and we're gonna eat after this, so his cell signal. The feds refused to pay. I've talked to him before a little bit, but it's still going on. But the courts have said that he's owed the,
Yeah, and that is
$75 million.
That is a very big. That is a very big lawsuit for a deprivation of rights and all that stuff. That is big.
Well, yeah, and literally, they like I said, Nick was homeless. They tried to manipulate him. They went through his hundreds of police files. They tried to say that he was a person of interest in all those. They told all his neighbors by knocking door to door that Nick's a potential suspect in murders and rapes, and he was also investigating and collecting data on child pornographers. They tried to charge him with those as well. Because he went after and got a DA fired and some other officials fired for, not prosecuting the cases that he was gathering data on. And, like I said, this is what happens. Our legal system would evolve in a positive way if people like Nick were not literally chewed up and murdered by the system. They would have murdered him, or they would have manipulated him into suicide. It's just crazy.
Oh, whoops! I think I shrunk the. Okay, there we go. Mike, is there any news articles about this case right now, or is it just all behind the scenes? Is it all hush hush? Because I got Pokerman's asking.
a lot of this stuff is hidden, although there were some corporate news stories in the papers that we can get Nick to cite and link us to. But a lot of it's been behind closed doors because of legal reasons. Like Nick's lawyer has had him not make any statements, and I got a brief idea as to what was going on when Nick was homeless last year, but he wasn't allowed to give me any details, and I didn't want to ruin his chances of a lawsuit, so I didn't really, pursue it, and I didn't really press him for data because, he had sleep deprivation, and he was kind of, not in a good headspace, and I could have been a jerk and pressed him for information, but that's not how I roll. I just gave him a place to stay, let him stay on my couch, and took him out to eat. And he's just a good person. Like when I met the dude, like I said, I vetted his LEO credentials because when he walked in, Nick's funny. He likes to dress up like Elvis. It's like the Elvis haircut, and he wears the Elvis glasses, and he actually does Elvis impersonations. So I'm sitting there with my former lawyer, waiting for Nick to show up, and this guy walks in, and he looks like, this guy is like 3,000 miles to Graceland with this big silver belt buckle, and I'm like, first thing that pops in my head is this guy's not a cop, he's like a hipster.
Anyway, hold it there for Mike. I want to answer a few questions from the chat. This happened in Oregon State, and this what is it, and his name's in the description on my YouTube channel, Pokerman, if you want to look try to do a Google or DuckDuckGo search on him. So if you want to do your own research before we get all the citations from him and stuff like that, that can be propagated into the channels.
I challenge anyone who watches any media that I say to not take what I say or my guests say at face value. I want everything to be double-checked, triple-checked, and researched out, because I believe that the wisdom of the crowd is stronger than me. So, please do research out Nick Stacy. Look for this lawsuit. I know there was brief mentions of it in the newspapers, if I remember, the online versions, like either the Willamette Week or Oregonian mentioned it. But Nick's lawyers told him to keep it all hush-hush, but the court did rule in his favor and say the $75 million he's owed it, but the feds are, refusing to cough it up. But it's not like that they're broke, Like we have 300 million Americans, they're taking a third of all our wages. That's like 100 million full-time slaves in America. If you do the math, that's way more than at the height of the slave trade back in the. Oh, there's Nick.
Did he get back in?
Sorry, I'm back in black. I
man. Bunny Boots has some questions for you, brother, in regards to your court case. So, Bunny, go.
Yeah. So the court case is done, and the feds are just straight up refusing to issue the payment. Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to get that.
Judgment was issued by Judge Del Rosario in the federal court here in Portland, Oregon.
Okay, and then the other thing is has there been any major coverage on your story? Because I got Pokerman in my chat. He's actually asking to see if there's any other kind of coverage on this, because he's like, holy cow. This is big and all that stuff. So,
I was put on the news a number of times through Channel 2. Everton Bailey, who should actually be listening if it all worked out properly. He should be listening. Everton Bailey is a very renowned journalist with KATU, Oregon Live. He has the connection that basically brings the Oregonian newspaper to KATU News, and he's a very, very good dear friend of mine. In fact, Mr. Blue Hair, he handled all of the articles about Mr. Milstein.
Okay, right on. That's my former lawyer for
Mine too.
Yeah. Milstein is a character. He ended up getting criminally charged for a bunch of stuff. But anywho, I'm angry at Milstein. I did a lot of free work trade for him, video wise, and he never lived up to his obligation. But whatever, you know.
Hey, same here. I put myself on the line for a lot of his clients when I didn't necessarily believe in it. So I compromised my ethics to.
Well, Nick, I have an apology for you, and I think possibly your friendship with me and your interaction with Milstein probably had something to do with the fact that you got the big bullseye painted on your back. So if there's anything I did, Nick Stacy associating with well-known anarchists, like if there's anything brought any of that on you, I just like to apologize. Hey, I'm sorry all this horrible stuff happened to you.
Ultimately, your friendship and your camaraderie with me mean more to me than what my career could have been, what it would have been, and what it should have been. So, I mean, ultimately, it had to be because of Milstein, because it was 7 days to the day, 7 days after he was arrested and convicted.
Wow. Yeah, like in Milstein, honestly, I think his heart's in the right place, but like he's just got problems, But he was going after a lot of corrupt DAs and a lot of people that were in the system, and I think he bit off more than he can chew. Like you can't.
So did I.
Yeah, you can't reform the whole system all at once. Like there's a reason why the system has lasted and it's so entrenched, and we have this evil totality of a police state nowadays in our culture. And this is what happens when things should have gotten better, but the system bit back.
Well, yeah, ultimately Milstein's heart's in the right place, but the problem is that when you're a defense attorney, the people that you should not trust are your damn clients.
Right. You got to keep professional objectivity, and I think that's what happened with him. But I think ultimately he's a good person, but he just messed up in a lot of ways. But I have to cut this broadcast short because I'm supposed to go out and eat. Bunny, if there's nothing left you have for Nick, I think we should just bounce.
Did we want to get into the post raid and all of that, or?
Well, we could save that for another stream. I mean, if you're up for that.
Could we have you on again, Nick, and talk about the aftermath after the raid, and we'll have you on again very soon and talk about the rest of this?
Whatever's clever, brother. I'm here for you, man.
Right on. Well, thank you. Yeah, I'll definitely have you on another show next week. Let's do it next week.
Yeah, we'll work out. We'll work out a time frame and all that stuff and get that knocked out, because after you mentioned the huge dollar amount, that settlement that got my chat going for a little bit there. So I'm pretty sure they're going to want to hear more details about your case.
Absolutely. It's supposed to be in 7 days. I'm allegedly supposed to be receiving $1.5 million as an installment out of court. However, I believe the feds are going to drag it out to arbitration, and it's going to have to go before a judge, because all I've wanted was $1 million installments for the next 74 years, meaning if I die before the 74 years is up, then it goes to my children, my 3 children. And they denied all that. They denied any payment whatsoever. And so, if they need to give me $1.5 million, well, guess what? Me and Blue Hair are going to be out having a steak going.
Sounds fun. Sounds fun. We love those piggy noises. So is there anything, let's everybody do their plugs. I'll go last.
Do you have anything you want to plug in, Nick?
I just want to thank Bunny Boots Productions, whatever, Bunny Boots Inc., whatever you got going on there. I absolutely love you to death. You're great with what you're doing here with Mr. Blue Hair. I'd like to also thank Mike Blue Hair with Film the Police PDX. If any of you guys have an opportunity listening on the interweb, check out Film the Police Portland. Mike Blue Hair. I'd also like to give a shout out, and maybe Mike, you can help me meet this individual. I think his name is Chris Ponte, I believe, with Cop Block, Oregon.
Yeah, I'll introduce you to Chris before he goes to prison. I'll introduce you to him. He's got a couple more months before he goes in.
Beautiful, beautiful. He's got some footage of me arresting somebody, and I was kind of an asshole to him, and so I want to apologize for that. And I want to thank my fiance Chelsea Wade Brown, and all of the people out there, and Felipe, who commented earlier. I want to thank you very much for commenting, and just keep watching the stream and give me criticism whenever I need it. That's what keeps me in shape. So I want to thank everybody out there listening, and Blue Hair will be there somewhat soon. I don't know. The lady's driving, so I'm gonna up my health insurance.
Nick, I want you to plug your company you just started with Fugitive Recovery as well. You need to tell people on the internet about that.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, it's Nick Stacy LLC. And basically, I have a few subsidiary companies on that main corporation, and one of them is Bounty Hunters International, Fugitive Recovery for the United States. We're bringing honest people into all of this, people with the same law enforcement mentality that I try to carry, and people with the compassion to understand that the people wearing the cuffs, whether they're on the belt or on your wrists, are still your brothers and sisters. So I'll definitely, I'm in the works of having, ironically enough, my other subsidiary company, Designs in Demand. They're coming up with a website and the whole 9 yards. By the way, Mr. Blue Hair, I have a ton of decals for Film the Police Portland, but they're in Salem.
Oh, nice! I can't wait to see them.
You paid for them like a year and a half ago.
Oh, I remember. But you were homeless and having a bad time, so I didn't want to bother you.
Oh, hey, no, I appreciate it, and I'll always take care of family. But they're done. They're in Salem. With my Vice President of Operations, Miss Erica Angone. So they're coming up with make a long story short, Designs in Demand is coming up with a website for Bounty Hunters International. And ultimately, part of what Bounty Hunters International means, too, is orchestrating and delivering a legislature that works for bounty hunters, keeping people honest, not just police officers, but maybe we need to have fugitive recovery accountability groups, like maybe Film the Dog Portland or something.
Interesting concept.
I mean, I don't know. I don't have a rooster tail mullet, but I know Mr. Chapman personally, and I've met Dwayne the Dog Chapman at multiple LEO conferences. And he has taught me almost everything I know about law enforcement and what it means to be a brother to the guy who's sitting in handcuffs in the back seat of your car.
So he's taught you the compassion aspects. Are you talking about?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Both me and him, we were on the wrong side of the law. I was blowing up high-ranking officers' mailboxes, and he was affiliated in Gypsy Joker activities.
Oh, wow. That 1%er bike gang that's associated with all the violence?
Right. Right. Exactly. And, a lot of people don't know this, but part of the reason that I got into law enforcement was I was raped by my uncle for 9 months as a child. And part of the reason I got into law enforcement was because I didn't want anybody to feel the loneliness and the unacceptance and the the filth that I felt when Eugene Police Department would not listen to me as a child.
Oh my God. I didn't even know that, Nick. That's horrible. I'm really sorry that happened to you.
Hey, you know what? It's helping me, be a part of people's lives today. So I appreciate it, Mr. Blue Hair, but I'm not sorry, because now I
I
can be
got
there
you.
for other people.
So you've taken control of your life, and you no longer feel like a victim or any of that BS, right?
Absolutely. And, talking almost 10 years later, I was able to take him into custody
Wow.
for crimes against other people, because statute of limitations took my crimes out of the mix.
Okay.
But I was able to take him into custody on pure hearsay evidence, and a judge bought it and listened to my personal testimony of being a child, being raped by this individual. And I actually got I got an award. I got a state police honorable mention from the hierarchy of the federal court system here in Portland, Oregon, for going in as a police officer and speaking my personal traumas with this individual. And now he's sitting behind bars for 158 years.
Wow, because he just continued raping other people after you, right? Just the cycle continued until finally.
He was a very high-ranking elder in the Jehovah's Witness congregation in Eugene. And, I, as a disclaimer, this has nothing to do with Jehovah's Witnesses or...
Did we just lose him?
I think we just lost Nick. Oh, there. I saw him pop on again. I saw his mic get muted.
Oh, okay. So he must have accidentally hit the mute on the
All right, so...
But I am baptized as Jehovah's Witness. This is not against Jehovah's Witness religion or people that practice that religion at all. This has nothing to do with them or what they believe or their church or anything like that. It's just a pure coincidence that he was a high-ranking elder in the Jehovah's Witness congregation. When I reported my crimes at the time to the Eugene Police Department, they discarded it as it was protected under what they call the religious shield, which means high-ranking elders in a religious congregation are not to be deemed liable for the crimes that they may or may not be committing.
So it's kind of looked at like a corporation, and since they're high up elders in a religious hierarchy, they have limited liability for prosecution. That's disgusting, Nick. That's like a horrible thing about what I love having access to you to learn these things, because it just makes me a better accountability activist. You know what I'm saying?
And I appreciate everything that you do. Honestly, if we didn't have people like you out there to keep people like me honest, who knows what would happen?
Well, thanks, Nick.
And
I
that's, I mean, I honestly, like, one day I hope to, be able to just share my story. That's the reason that I got into special victims investigations to begin with, was because of my past. But ultimately, this year, on Christmas, I received a card from my very first victim, that girl I was telling you about. And she brought me her senior photo, or she mailed me her senior photo and said, "This is the girl that you helped become a woman." And I didn't know what that really meant. But after reading in the letter that she sent with that photograph, it means that I can now be a Persian because you stood up for me when no one else believed in me. And that was something that I wanted as a child, going to Eugene Police Department, and they're like, "Well, guess what? You're out of luck, bud.
Yeah.
It's protected by the religious shield."
Yeah, that's one of the things that happens a lot of times in the justice system, especially rape crimes and sexual assault crimes, is a lot of times the victims get treated horribly and they get discouraged from being able to tell their stories and to get any kind of help. And that's one of the travesties of the way our system works.
Absolutely. And for anybody who is out there right now, I'm so glad that Bunny Boots Inc. and Film the Police Portland, as well, in cooperation with Nick Stacy LLC here, use Google Hangout. I have a Google Hangout support group for people who have been a victim of sexual assault at a young age that just can't talk about it face to face with people or in a room with people. You can get on Google Hangouts and you can hit me up and be like, hey, Lieutenant Chandler Stacy, guess what? I have a story I need to tell. And you can tell me and the group what you...
Well, Nick, can you... Well, we'll put a link to that support group for people that have been assaulted. Nick, we'll put a link to that under the video when this gets produced and re-edited on the internet. But can you tell folks where they can find that Google Hangouts that want to participate?
Absolutely, absolutely. Currently, because I don't have a genius to the level of Bunny Boots or Blue Hair, it's currently under, you can find it under my telephone number or my email address, which I'm sure Mr. Blue Hair will publicize both of those things as I give him permission to.
If you like, I will. But like, if you, I'm warning you, there's a lot of crazy psychotic trolls. I'm more willing to publicize your email address, but not your phone number.
Beautiful. And I love that because I'm a very sexy human being and time is money. So my email address is as follows: WASUPNIC1955@gmail.com. And I'll make sure that Bunny Boots and Mr. Blue Hair alike have that to go ahead and put in, actually in the description or what have you. But it's a support group for people either during their puberty stage, pre-adolescent, that have been sexually assaulted like myself. Again, I was raped by my uncle for 9 months around the age of 10, 11 years old. And that was what got me started working in special victims. So, if your voice isn't heard, guess what? I'm going to give you a shoulder to cry on. I'm going to give you an ear to talk to. And even if I don't know you, I'm still going to be a brother to you. Whether you're my brother or my sister, I'm still going to be a brother to you and listen to what you have to say, because you know what? Your story matters. Much more than Blue Lives Matter, I mean, this is something that really matters.
So, Bunny, do you want to do your plugs and then I'll do mine?
Okay, yes, as is, this is streaming out on YouTube, Mixer, Twitch, and Periscope. If you guys are tuning in on any of those platforms, we've already had a few people that subscribed to, followed or subscribed during the stream there. And also, thank you for the person that signed up on the Patreon. I'm going to see about trying to get another First Amendment Friday up going this Friday, if I can get the time worked out on that one. And as is, if you guys want to have some fun, I of course have a Discord going, and I'll probably be at some point in the future hosting live discussions using Discord. And that's about it for me plugging in. Go ahead, Mike Bluehair.
All right, so Mike Bluehair here for Film the Police Portland. I've of course brought you former LEO and Police Lieutenant Nick Stacy. Thank you so much, Nick, for being willing to tell us your story and just being the stellar human you are. And, that's just how I feel about it. My anarchist folks are going, I can't believe you're complimenting a former cop. I'm like, well, you're just going to have to deal with it.
Hey, you know what? To the anarchists out there, believe me, okay, whenever I look at the thin blue line American flag, I see a big A with a circle around it right in the middle. So, you know what? Any criticism, any kind of harsh comebacks that you can throw at me, any kind of disrespect you want to throw my way, I'm going to give you a thumbs up, a wink, and a giggle, because that's pretty cute.
Right on.
We're all fighting for the same thing. Mr. Blue Hair, my sincerest thanks very much, brother.
Oh, you're quite
Till the
welcome.
end. Bunny Boots,
Yep.
thank you very much for allowing me to be a part of your production, and I look forward to much more involvement in the near future.
All right.
But yeah, we'll definitely have you on next week. And to finish my plugs, if you're watching this on YouTube, please do hook me up with an upvote. Share this stuff. I'm starting to drift away from so much cop watching because honestly, I'm just tired of watching people get put in cages, and I'm tired of heckling's fun. But I'm tired of cussing cops out when I catch them doing naughty stuff. I'm just getting annoyed with it. So I want to start doing more social commentary. I want to start doing more reaching out to other people in the activist community and doing more, what I would consider more serious work. And I'm drifting in that direction. So that's where my channel's headed. If you're watching this on Steam, do hook a brother up with an upvote and a re-Steam for police accountability. And as always, I do bring an anarchist perspective to cop watching. This is what anarchism is to me, is when people in a community go out and try to do something, integrate into your daily life pattern, something that you're doing to make the world a better place. So yeah, do share that. If you're watching this live stream, do hook me up with a super chat because homie's broke. I'm literally being economically starved and censored off of YouTube because of the controversial nature of what I'm doing. So thanks for watching, everybody. And my invite to everyone who's watching this that's an accountability activist or a watcher or an auditor or whatever on the internet, re-upload this, chop it up into parts, mirror it on your channel. You have my permission to take this video, chop it up, and monetize it. I'll give you written permission. I don't care. If there's anything in any of these live streams that you want to use as another activist, you have my permission. Contact me. I'll give you written permission in the form of an email to monetize any of my work. I don't care. I'm about this movement rising and the knowledge base of everyone that's a part of accountability in our system to get raised to a higher bar. So let's do this together, and thanks for watching, everybody.
Oh, and before I forget, and we just got a subscription from Pokerman. The music that we have in the intro is Techno Axe New Metal. If you do end up using that song, make sure you give proper accreditation to that person. So, and that is it. And I will go ahead and sign off for the evening, hitting end stream.